Television producers, directors, and writers to honor the best in Canadian television. It's no surprise that The Fifth Estate has been nominated for 5 Geminis, including Best News and Information Series. Tonight, The Fifth has a story about an accident that could have happened to any driver, but woven into this tragedy is a shocking twist that few could imagine. Here's The Fifth Estate.
Estate.
Good evening, I'm Lyndon McIntyre. Welcome to The Fifth Estate. The accident happened in seconds, no more. It killed 2 people. But while one of them died at the scene, the other would only meet her end much later, disgraced, desperate, and all alone. She had it all: beauty, brains, a great family, a solid career. But then Donna Lawrence caused a fatal car crash, and although she would vehemently deny it, some would say that it was really no accident at all.
She had slurred speech, glassy eyes, the strong smell of alcoholic beverage. She was unsteady on her feet.
That charge kick-started a small-town gossip machine, and soon it was running out of control.
The first thing I heard was that she was caught with drugs on her way to Sydney to sell it. Was the first story I heard.
In the end, the woman with the golden life was left with a tarnished name, a clouded future, and a bizarre scheme to escape it all.
He arranged to come to Toronto to kill her, and all he needed was his ticket paid for.
It's known as the grapevine, the jungle telegraph, the devil's radio. Call it whatever you like. Gossip seems to be one of those habits we humans just can't kick. The juicier, the better, and never mind the facts. Donna Lawrence came to learn a lot about gossip after that car crash in Nova Scotia. She never denied causing the crash, did deny charges about how it happened, but once the gossip started, it never let up. And in the end, she was destroyed, crushed by guilt and the weight of other people's words. It all began with something that happened in the blink of an eye. They came to eastern Nova Scotia in 1981 to find their piece of paradise. 16 years later, on a warm spring afternoon, in a matter of seconds, paradise turned into purgatory because of a car accident. Donna Lawrence survived the accident with minor physical injuries, but even the people closest to her couldn't have known that she had just begun to die. After months of anguish, she turned to the internet to arrange a murder, her own. Her husband, Roland Lawrence.
It's unbelievable what happened. To watch someone that you care for to be destroyed in the manner in which she was destroyed.
How you doing? Turn it off!
To everyone who knew her, she was the woman who had it all. She was slim and beautiful and smart.
Oh my, let's see that big smile.
This is from Roland.
She had a challenging career, a happy home, an adoring family.
You're not one. Oh, look at this. It's so football.
Her youngest son, Jesse.
I couldn't have asked for any better place to grow up or a better family to grow up with.
His parents were typical of their generation. He was a footloose Vietnam veteran from Texas. She was from Ontario. They met in Vancouver. When they married, they went looking for a quiet place to raise a family. They found it in Nova Scotia.
We were very happy with our life there. We didn't need anything else. We had it all right there.
Right there was 135 acres of land, a seaside cabin, A mile of coastline just across St. George's Bay from Cape Breton Island. If there was a flaw in paradise, it was something deep. An intangible they might not have understood. They were from away and fierce about their privacy, and their privacy included this, a private beach the local people had long regarded as a public place. Derek DeCoste has lived here all his life. He was one of the best friends Donna and her husband had here.
Yeah, like people, they kind of wanted to be here all the time. Like they used to come here swimming years ago, and they figured they still had the right to go swimming wherever they wanted to. But they'd be always using foul language against her, and a lot of things, and they didn't like that, so they used to chase them out.
As outsiders, they couldn't have known how access to a beach might sow seeds of resentment in a coastal village, or anticipate the harvest of malice it might one day yield. As the main breadwinner in the family, she'd have been too busy to notice anyway. She worked for the Nova Scotia government in economic development, promoting small business.
I thought she was intelligent. She certainly was an attractive person. She was energetic. She had a mind of her own.
How are you, Jess?
Oh, good. Yeah, good.
Alex Harris was her boss for 14 years. He became a close friend, close enough to know that behind the energy and optimism there were deep needs for order and approval.
Would you say she was a perfectionist?
Pretty close, about some things, about her work. She used to get down on herself a little bit. She was sort of a little self-critical.
Whatever self-doubt lurked inside, outwardly, she was a woman in control.
Her whole presentation was important to Donna because Donna presented herself well and her life well and her job, and she was really helpful to anyone I sent there. And she was so good at what she did.
Rita Warner is chair of the Nova Scotia Advisory Committee on the Status of Women. In May 1997, she invited Donna Lawrence to speak to a group of 100 women on the challenges of setting up a small business. On May 28th, the morning of her speech, Donna Lawrence was up before 5 to complete an assignment for a university course. For breakfast, she had orange juice. She'd later recall it was all she had to drink that day. Her speech was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon in central Cape Breton. Shortly after noon, she set out on Route 105, the Trans-Canada Highway, to a place she'd never been before, a cultural center known locally as the Gaelic College. Somehow she missed an intersection where she should have taken another road, only realizing her mistake after she'd gone about a kilometer past it. She turned her car around and headed back. A couple of kilometers away, 2 women had just pulled over near a small church to speak with their husbands, highway employees who were working there. Barbara McRae.
We pulled into the church and spoke to my husband and father-in-law, and Marge said that she was tired, so I said, well, let's go. And that's the last I remember.
Marge was Marjorie McRae, Barbara's mother-in-law. She was 56. Heading toward them was 44-year-old Donna Lawrence, who once again had missed the road leading to the Gaelic College, where 100 women were waiting for her speech. The second time Donna Lawrence missed this sign, her car strayed across the center line. When she saw an oncoming vehicle, she pulled back into her own lane. Barbara McRae, who was driving the other vehicle, also reacted instantaneously, but she pulled to the left, straight into Donna Lawrence's lane, where the 2 cars collided head-on. The elapsed time from when they first saw each other to when they hit was 4 seconds. Brad McRae remembers a motorist stopping to tell him and his father there had been a serious accident nearby.
Dad had kind of an inkling that there was something wrong. He felt it. But I didn't know until I got up around the turn and I seen the trunk lid of our car. It had a gold trunk lid, and I knew then that it was my mother and wife.
They were among the very first to arrive at the scene of the accident. Sandy McRae.
They were both trapped. They got my daughter alive, but my wife died before they were able to get her out.
And you were there?
I was there the whole time. All I could do was hold her hand until her life slipped away. Yeah. An awful experience. Yeah.
Ron Bonner is a volunteer firefighter trained in first aid. He was on his way to a construction job when he saw the aftermath of the accident. He remembers Donna Lawrence sitting alone in her wrecked car.
She was shook up and she was in shock. And so she got into the back seat of the car, so I went over and I sat in the back and I was asking if she was all right and did she hurt anywheres or...
When you say she was in shock, what do you mean?
She was just rambling on. And you can just see her eyes. She was glaring, you know, and just wasn't making any sense of what she was when she was speaking.
Baddeck, 67, Charlie 49.
3 RCMP officers headed for the accident scene that afternoon.
A serious motor vehicle accident on the Trans-Canada Highway near St. Anne.
The first to speak to Donna Lawrence was Constable Mike Toll.
I spoke briefly with her, confirmed her identity, confirmed that she was the driver of the one motor vehicle.
He'd been a Mountie for 10 years, all spent in Cape Breton, where alcohol is a factor in many highway accidents. But this was in the middle of the afternoon. These were middle-aged women. The last thing you'd have expected here was a drunken driver. But that was exactly what Constable Toll concluded after he talked to Donna Lawrence. And what were the signs to you?
She had slurred speech, glassy eyes, the strong smell of alcoholic beverage. She was unsteady on her feet.
About an hour after the accident, Constable Mike Toll brought Donna Lawrence here, where a doctor carried out a brief examination. He found nothing physically wrong with her, but afterwards, he and 3 nurses were clear and unanimous on one crucial point, that she smelled of alcohol, was disoriented, and walked with difficulty, all classic symptoms of someone who was drunk. Constable Toll arrested Donna Lawrence. Back at the RCMP detachment, he asked her to take a breathalyzer test. Did she have any idea, do you think, that how much trouble she was in at that point? I mean...
She asked at one point what charges she was facing. I indicated that there were serious injuries in the motor vehicle accident.
The officer wasn't prepared to tell her that someone had died and that she was facing grave criminal charges. 2 hours after a head-on collision in which her small frame was slammed by an exploding airbag, 12 hours into a stressful day, a day without food, she made a choice that would seal her guilt in the minds of strangers. She refused the breathalyzer. Her friends would be mystified and still don't believe it was because she'd been drinking. Alex Harris.
Donna was very, very proud about the way she presented herself, particularly to another group of women. Nobody will ever convince me that she went down there under the influence of alcohol.
That afternoon, while Donna Lawrence waited to see a doctor at the hospital, Rita Warner went to see her.
All I seen was a woman who was really distraught and in crisis, but I didn't take note of anything else. I was really concerned for her. And as I seen her, she just had her head down and she was crying.
Roland Lawrence arrived at the RCMP detachment 3 hours after the accident to be told his wife was in a jail cell.
He told me that she had refused to take a breathalyzer, and I said, well, take it right now. Get her here and take it now. And he said, no, it's too late for that.
How would you describe his bedside manner?
He was kind of got his back up over that.
When you said she wasn't drunk?
Yeah, when I questioned that.
But you hadn't yet seen her. How could you be so sure?
I've lived with this woman for over 20 years. This was not a possibility.
I'm trying to picture the woman in this spot at that time, whether she was depressed, excited. kind of numb. What?
He was, as you described, kind of numb. When her husband arrived, he was shown to an interview room, and then she was brought down. At that time, she was told that there had been a death.
How did she react to that?
She cried.
She cried?
Yes.
The doctor at the hospital in Baddeck found nothing wrong with her. But days later, her boss insisted she see another doctor in Inverness, where people didn't know her or the woman who'd been killed. Alex Harris. When you went to the doctor, what was his finding?
Bernie found that her foot had been broken in a couple of places, and that she had contusions and bruises around her body and around her head. And he felt that she probably had had a concussion.
When we come back, guilt by gossip.
The first thing I heard was that she was caught with drugs on her way to Sydney to sell it.
I mean, he's smart, creative. He set this up beautifully.
Ex-cop.
Tom Stone. What were you thinking?
Ex-con.
I didn't do everything they said I did. I mean, not all of it.
Hotshot crime specialist.
Do you have any idea how we're gonna explain this?
Not really.
Calgary's corporate crime busters bend all the rules to catch the bad guys.
I can break this case, and I can put you on your plane.
Tom Stone premieres Sunday at 8 on CBC television. Add some drama to your life.
I've been a waitress for 40 years to earn a decent living for my daughter and myself. My doctor told me I had a smoker's tumor, and therefore I'm dying. I never smoked a day in my life. I never smoked. The air was blue where I worked, and I'm dying of lung cancer from secondhand smoke.
Right now, you can get 2 teen burgers for only $5 at A&W. That's 2 great tasting teen burgers for only $5 for a limited time at A&W.
Are your deposits protected? A dollar in a Canadian bank, trust, or loan company is a dollar that's most likely protected by the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. In fact, CDIC automatically insures most deposits from $1 to $60,000. But some investments, such as mutual funds, stocks, and foreign currency accounts, are not insured. So, are your deposits protected? Call, visit our website, or ask where you bank or invest.
Where can I find out about getting a job?
Where can I search for health information online? Where can I learn about starting a business?
Where can we find information about climate change?
Got questions? The Government of Canada's website has information about these subjects and more. It's there for you. Canada.gc.ca. A message from the Government of Canada.
Counting sheep will never be out of work again. Welcome to heaven.
You'll feel the difference the moment you lie down. Serta, we make the world's best mattress.
It's not just about saving money. It's about spending time, just dropping by and creating bonds rather than simply buying them. At Edward Jones, it's never just about investing. It's about knowing you and your dreams.
My every hope, my life, my world, it all begins with a dream.
Edward Jones, investing in you and your dreams.
New Fantastic Orange Action. With its advanced cleaning power and pure orange oil. Fantastic Orange Action. It even sounds tough.
Ah, beautiful, isn't it, Mr. Bond? But deadly. It's made of pure plutonium and corn syrup.
Come celebrate the best in Canadian television. Sean Cullen hosts the Gemini Awards, Monday night on CBC.
And now we return to the Fifth Estate.
The accident was big news in Baddeck. A fancy lady in a fancy car was driving drunk and killed Marjorie McRae.
This is 1270 CJCB, Cape Breton's news leader.
By the time the story hit her home community an hour and a half away, it was sensational. Derek DeCoste was renovating the Lawrence's house at the time.
The first thing I heard was that she was caught with drugs on her way to Sydney to sell it. Was the first story I heard. Wow. And I laughed when they told me that. And then they said that they found a whole bunch of liquor in the car and all kinds of other things, and that she was guilty, you know. And
Sandy McRae, whose wife Marjorie was killed in the accident, heard similar rumors weeks later in a conversation with a stranger.
Oh, he said, yeah, I know that person. He said, I can even tell you where she buys her drugs. I wasn't interested where she bought her drugs, but
This is the kind of gossip that was going around.
That's right, that's right. And a lot of people I met have told me different stories about the problem that she had with drugs and alcohol.
It wasn't long before the lurid stories were reaching the ears of her family. Her eldest son, Christopher. Did it ever cross your mind that, wow, my mom actually did something bad?
I didn't think for a minute that she had done anything bad. I mean, I've known her my entire life, and I've never, ever, ever seen her drunk.
To her family and friends, the gossip was absurd. She barely qualified for the description social drinker. Suddenly she was being described as a drunken killer.
Well, she wasn't a drinker, that's for sure. Like, she'd sit down and have the occasional drink of wine, like a sociable drink. And the odd time on my birthday when I'd go over, I'd used to buy a little pint of Crown Royal and go over, but she was never much for a hard liquor drinker. She'd have a little bit just to be sociable. And she used to torment me all the time. Well, she used to be after me for drinking and then driving home after. She was dead against that.
Donna was an honorable person. And to be accused of something that you're innocent of, to be spoken to rudely by people that you know or had known in your work was just more than she could bear.
The criminal charges and the cold currents of gossip had an almost immediate effect. The family livelihood was suddenly in jeopardy. Her workplace was infected by the stories. She was suddenly isolated. Old resentments resurfaced. They were outsiders. There had been disputes about access to the shore. Did you notice any change in her personality?
Changed a lot. It changed a lot. Like, she didn't want to go out nowhere because she knew people were talking about her. And they were always saying, oh, there's the woman that was in the accident. And a lot of people didn't even know who she was, but yet they knew of the woman that was in the accident.
Eventually, she went back to Inverness to see another doctor, this time a psychiatrist, Dr. Jim O'Brien.
She could hardly stop crying. She hardly stopped crying, and she was extremely preoccupied with what had happened. In a way, what I was faced really was with a wall of distress, which was extremely hard to get beyond, to break it down and say, what was this? Because she'd be just crying.
Because she was broke, her defense would fall to a flamboyant legal aid lawyer named Alan Nicholson, one of Cape Breton's most effective courtroom performers.
I felt we had a good case. I had, there was evidence there that, in fact, she was not impaired. It was a winnable case, in my opinion.
The trial was to start in Baddeck June 21st, 1999, more than 2 years after the accident. Jury members came from a neighboring county to reduce the danger of bias, a worthy objective, but one that suffered its first setback day one of the trial, when 2 of the original jurors had to be excused. The judge, determined to start the trial on schedule, had to send sheriff's deputies into the streets to find substitutes. One of the people summoned to the courthouse was Gordon Matheson.
One of the witnesses is a nurse who, her sister would be one of the best friends of my wife. And I explained that situation. And it was felt by the judge that perhaps it would be a good idea to avoid bias not to have me as a juror.
You know, you're a human being. You're sitting there and you're... Suzanne McDonald didn't know Donna Lawrence, but she knew just about everybody else connected with the case.
We went into the courtroom and then they called us up one by one and asked us if we had any reasons that we thought that we shouldn't be on the jury. And I told them that I knew the people. I didn't know them well, but I knew everybody. I'd worked at the post office for 28 years, so...
And they didn't find anything wrong with that?
No, he accepted me.
The Crown would produce 8 witnesses to back up the Mountie, who was convinced Donna Lawrence had been drinking.
I noticed a lady sitting in the jump seat in the ambulance, and she was trying to get out of the ambulance. The ambulance attendant, Travis McNeil, he indicated to her to stay seated in there. She didn't pay attention to what he was telling.
She to get out of there?
Yes. She ended up sitting on the floor. She ended up falling on the floor. At that time, they could detect a strong odor of an alcoholic beverage on her breath.
But there were several witnesses who didn't notice any smell of alcohol at all, and one of them was adamant. Ron Bonner is a non-drinker who says he has an acute sensitivity to the smell of liquor.
When I was about maybe 4 or 5 inches from the lady, speaking to her in her face, I've never smelled anything off her breath. And she didn't act like if she was any alcohol impaired.
No, Boo, you didn't smell any
Not a thing. Never didn't smell a drop off her. And I sat with that lady for maybe 20 minutes or longer.
And the lawyer, Alan Nicholson, had other doubts.
An investigation should be done immediately. In this case, I think the conclusion was drawn. He went on vacation. He didn't pick it up again for several weeks. And in fact, if you look at some of the nurses, it's 2 years before they interview them. And I mean, their evidence is really not reliable in my mind.
The nurses?
At the time. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they're professional people.
It's 2 years later, though. What do they remember?
They remember that they saw a woman who reeked of alcohol, I think, as they put it.
Some of them did, some of them did.
Who staggered.
She had a broken foot.
Who didn't seem to know where she was or what she was talking about.
Oh, I think by the time she got to the hospital, she was impaired by the concussion. I don't doubt that. But see, what's important to note as well is that 5 or 6 hours later, when she's finally released, the officer testified that she was just as impaired at that time as he was when he first encountered her. How could she be impaired that long by alcohol?
Unless she was absolutely plastered.
She'd have been comatose.
But there was another issue that troubled even her defenders. She refused to take a breathalyzer test.
Yes, she did.
Most people find that hard to swallow. My reaction would be, get me to that breathalyzer machine as quickly as possible and get me out of here.
I agree.
And she went in the other direction.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. Her explanation to me was she was very confused. She had severe ringing in her ears. She was confused. They wouldn't tell her what the charges were going to be. The other question I'd ask is, why didn't they get a warrant for blood? They could have done that.
The judge decided that the breathalyzer refusal was ambiguous, and because it was inflammatory, the jury wouldn't hear about it. A worthy goal, but wishful thinking.
It got in the press. Got in the Cape Breton Post.
So her refusal of the breathalyzer got in the media?
Yeah, during the trial.
During the trial?
Yeah, wasn't supposed to, but it did.
It was in the news, it was all over. So, you know, community or an island with 160,000 people, news like that don't take long to get around.
Are you suggesting that people on the jury, people in the community would have known about that?
Well, if they lived on the island, they knew about it. Otherwise, it's almost impossible. Those people didn't know that she refused the breathalyzer. You know, they had to know.
When it was her turn to testify, Donna Lawrence was emphatic.
She was absolutely adamant that she had nothing to drink. Absolutely adamant. It would have been much easier if we'd have had a glass of wine at lunch or something to explain that smell of alcohol on the breath. But we can't invent defenses. A lot of people think that lawyers do that. We don't. That was her position, that she absolutely was not drinking.
She was poised and articulate, and she was fighting for her life as a professional public servant. Her fate was in the hands of a jury, many of whom, like her, were middle-aged married women. When we come back, the jury speaks.
I knew that if she went to jail, she would die. Like she would just die.
This is CBC Television, Canada's own.
I'm Mark Kelly. This is CBC Wednesday Night. If you want to find out more about CBC's news and current affairs programs, including, of course, The Fifth Estate, you can visit our website. It's all there, just a few clicks away. We'll return with The Fifth Estate.
Ah, beautiful, isn't it, Mr. Bond? But deadly. It's made of pure plutonium and corn syrup.
Come celebrate the best in Canadian television. Sean Cullen hosts the Gemini Awards, Monday night on CBC.
You know the way dishcloths get. Dirty, smelly, full of bacteria. But not if you use the Natura cloth. Available only at Home Hardware or Home Building Center. A new way to clean anything without streaking. Made from wood fiber, the 8-layer lint-free Natura cloth rinses clean and germ-free and is super soft. You can only buy the Natura cloth at home, and every purchase helps support the Tree Canada Foundation. The amazing Natura cloth, only $2.97. Only at home.
If you're like the baby in this book and change your shape every time you look, get ready for a nice surprise. His magical diaper has stretch in your size. Huggies Supreme Diapers, our stretchiest ever, designed for greater comfort and a perfect fit. The only diaper with amazing stretch in all sizes is Huggies Supreme, a fit you'll love with comfort to spare. They're the ultimate in care.
A French lesson. La baguette. A thin, crisp crust. A warm, golden color. And a moist, slightly chewy texture.
Introducing Tim Hortons baguette sandwiches, made with oven-fresh French-style baguette bread and available with any of your favorite sandwiches in regular or big.
Does anyone have any ideas on how we can reverse the slide? Anyone?
You know, if you retooled the Moose Jaw plant to use an aluminum alloy instead of steel, you can reduce your product weight and shipping costs by 23.4%. And I picked up today's boxes. See ya.
A big part of our business is knowing your business. Visit FedEx.ca for our complete range of services. FedEx, go beyond.
In a world so difficult to understand, we need to know. We need the answers. We need to see. We need to be heard. Or our perspective becomes so narrow, we don't see anything at all. Never stop asking. Never stop looking. Never stop thinking. Read the Globe and Mail, where perspective is everything.
Calgary's corporate crime busters bend all the rules to catch the bad guys. I can break this case, and I can put you on your plane.
Tom Stone. What were you thinking?
Ex-cop. Ex-con. Tom Stone. Premiere Sunday at 8 on CBC.
And now we return to the Fifth Estate.
She had to wait a day for the jury to decide. In the end, they found her guilty. 4 charges of criminal negligence and impaired driving causing death and bodily harm. Suzanne MacDonald, juror number 12.
There was some things that you wondered whether she was telling the truth or not. they contradicted everything that everybody else said. So it was hard.
For Donna Lawrence, all hope of vindication was gone. For her defenders and her family, it was a bitter moment. There were still unanswered questions about what really caused the tragedy on Highway 105, which is to say that there were still reasonable doubts. They thought she'd get the benefit of those doubts, but they were wrong. If there was any comfort at all, it was in knowing that an awful chapter in her life was over. But they were wrong about that as well.
I felt there was reasonable doubt. I figured out of 12 people, surely.
Here you have a good-looking professional woman. You put her before her peers, and they find her guilty.
Yeah.
What happened?
It was like we had to prove beyond any doubt that she was innocent. That seemed to be the burden that was cast upon us.
For Sandy McRae, whose wife Marjorie was killed in the accident, the verdict was a kind of closure, but there was still bitterness.
The impression she gave me was that she never showed me where there was any signs of remorse whatsoever.
Barbara McRae has been unable to work since the accident. She and her husband have since lost their home.
Well, I've joined MAD. I've been involved with MAD.
Mothers Against
Drunk Drivers. That's what caused my accident. I was a drunk driver.
There was never any doubt in your mind, was there, about that she was?
Not after all the stories I heard. No. No doubt.
And the stories never really stopped. But in an ironic twist, one story would surface to raise new doubt about the verdict. Remember the start of the trial in Baddeck back in June 1999, when the judge sent the sheriff to the streets to find a replacement juror. While one prospective new juror waited to be called, a woman sitting nearby made a startling remark. Gordon Matheson.
The prospective juror turned to me and said she was drunk on the wrong side of the road. I don't know what to be having a trial for.
What did you make of the statement?
I recoiled.
He recoiled again moments later when that woman was picked for the jury, and he casually mentioned the incident to a colleague back at his office. Weeks later, after the trial, he got a visit from a private investigator.
And asked if I would speak with him, that he had information that I may have overheard something significant prior to jury selection. And I simply said, sure.
It was about the woman who became juror number 12. Today, Suzanne MacDonald can't specifically remember the remark, but admits it sounds like something she'd have said.
It'd be the same as if you met somebody in the street and said, I don't know why they're having that case, you know. The RCMP say she was drunk, the doctor says she's drunk, you know. It'd be the same thing whether you were going to be on the jury or not. I mean, everybody has their own ideas.
Maybe so, but for the lawyer, Alan Nicholson, it seemed like a breakthrough, and the issue of juror bias became a major point in an appeal to the Nova Scotia Court of Appeals.
If you'd have been at the appeal, you would have said, we've won. We're getting a new trial.
But getting a new trial wasn't going to be that easy.
It took them 5-6 months to come down with a decision, but basically they said it was loose talk in an informal setting.
And then we found out halfway through the trial that he was using...
Bill Delaney of the Nova Scotia Public Prosecution Office argued against the appeal.
Well, what it takes to get a new trial in Nova Scotia is some indication that there wasn't a fair trial in the first place. And the Court of Appeal looked at this case very carefully, and they were of the view this is a fair trial. The issues raised by the defense on the appeal were not really of any significance.
That view seemed to say that justice is deaf to gossip in a small community. And yet the juror, Suzanne MacDonald, even now relies on gossip to assure herself that she was right in finding Donna Lawrence guilty.
This was after the trial that I heard it, though.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. It was from a good source.
It was from a good source?
Mm-hmm.
And what did the good source say, exactly?
That she was staying at a hotel in Sydney and that she was so drunk she couldn't get out of the elevator.
This was after the trial?
This was, like, be at night during the trial.
Almost 4 years after the accident,
Donna Lawrence decided on one last try for vindication before the Supreme Court of Canada. Eugene Meehan is an Ottawa lawyer. The more he studied the case, the more convinced he was that she'd been wronged.
I read the judgment at trial. I read the judgment of the Court of Appeal, and it doesn't hang together for me. It doesn't make sense to me. And it keeps me awake at night, actually. As I dug more, as I read more, the dots seemed to connect themselves for me, and it made sense. The nonsense of what had occurred to Donna made sense to me. It was understandable how it could happen to someone, how it could happen to a normal person.
Eventually, he framed what he thought were 4 strong arguments to justify a new trial. Juror bias was one of them.
If the starting position is that you should be judged by an impartial body of peers from your community, then if you have someone who has clearly expressed partiality before trial, and that person is with all the other persons that you hope and wish to be impartial, it certainly raises serious concerns.
August 9th last year, the Supreme Court of Canada turned down Donna Lawrence's application to appeal the Nova Scotia verdict.
Did you ever feel sorry for her?
Yes, I do. Of course I do, yeah. Yeah, sure. You know, when she set out that morning, she didn't set out with the intention of hurting anybody. And so I did feel sorry for her, sure, of course I did, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't help it.
By August last year, when all hope of legal vindication died, Donna Lawrence was spending most of her time in Florida with her American-born husband and her sons. In mid-August, she was to appear in a Cape Breton court for sentencing. She made another crucial choice.
I knew that if she went to jail, she would die. Like she would just die. And I guess that's why I let her stay.
But did you know that she also couldn't live as a fugitive?
I don't know that. I truly don't know that. I thought maybe that this would go away.
He was hopeful, but he'd already had a chilling insight into her desperation back during the months just after the accident. At a time when she was unemployed, being stonewalled by insurance and workers' compensation officials, she hatched a desperate scheme to get money for her family. She told her psychiatrist, Dr. Jim O'Brien.
So apparently she got on the internet, got some morbid character from Chicago, and they apparently corresponded back and forth, and he arranged to come to Toronto to kill her. And all he needed was his ticket paid for. And she would go up there, and he'd murder her in her room in Toronto, and therefore she'd be murdered, and therefore the family would get the money.
She thought it through to that extent. I mean, this is a scenario out of a Stephen King novel.
In a way it is, but it's also pretty heroic. She was actually prepared to have herself killed in this way to provide money for her children to go to college and enough money so her husband wouldn't have to leave the home. That's a pretty heroic thing to do.
Shortly before she was to carry out her plan, which involved coming to Toronto, where in one of the thousands of hotel rooms out there, the killer would drown her in a bathtub, her husband found out about it. No one will ever know for sure whether she'd actually have gone through with it, but it wasn't to be the last of her self-destructive schemes. November 19th last year, Roland and Donna Lawrence were living in a seaside apartment near St. Pete's Beach in Florida. Their sons were an hour away in Englewood.
I was away that night, and when I got back that morning, I looked in on her. She was in the bedroom and looked like she was asleep. And I went over to just kiss her on the cheek. And when I touched her, she was cold. And I realized then that, she was dead. She had such a peaceful look, smile. Maybe she found what she needed, what she was looking for.
According to the autopsy report, Donna Lawrence died from an overdose of painkillers, antidepressants, and sleeping pills.
Dad phoned me, and he told me that she was gone. And I just couldn't believe it. And I just couldn't believe it.
In 4 seconds on a fine spring day in Nova Scotia, a car accident unraveled many lives. 4 seconds that will resonate for years with questions and with grief.
Thank God I got my family, and that keeps me going. I never minded going to work in the morning, but coming home is not. It's not coming home at all. It's coming to a house, eh? What used to be a home.
You think you could ever go back to Nova Scotia?
I've no reason to go back there for anything. I don't have anything in Nova Scotia.
You have memories.
I have memories of our family. They're not all necessarily in Nova Scotia. They say home is where you make it. Nova Scotia is just another place.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more of the Fifth Estate.
Stuck in a weekday trance? Well, snap out of it.
It's not takeout!
Because Friday night we deliver big laughs.
Are you finished?
Yes, go ahead. With Royal Canadian Air Force, 9 o'clock on CBC Comedy Friday.
I've been a waitress for 40 years to earn a decent living for my daughter and myself. My doctor told me I had a smoker's tumor, and therefore I'm dying. I never smoked a day in my life. I never smoked. The air was blue where I worked, and I'm dying of lung cancer from secondhand smoke.
Magic Bag. The all-natural pain and stress reliever for men and women of all ages. Effective, personal, hot-cold therapy all year round. Magic Bag, available in pharmacies and at your supermarket.
Who will be the best news anchor? Peter, Kevin, or Lloyd? Instead of voting for a winner, they should fight a homicidal android. Gemini's.
Join host Sean Cullen for a celebration of the very best in Canadian television.
Thank you very much.
The 17th Annual Gemini Awards, Monday night on CBC.
See you there, Gemini's.
You know that feeling when you move into your own apartment?
You buy your first car.
You know that feeling when...
The days seem too short and the possibilities seem endless.
You know that feeling you get when you suddenly realize...
This is my life. I'm gonna make it what I want it to be. I love that feeling.
You can get there from here. New Canada Savings Bonds. It's the way to save. 100% guaranteed. A message from the Government of Canada.
mom, the finder of lost socks, the princess of lunch packing, the person who knows whether or not fish can hear. You're my alarm clock, my back scrubber, my morning story. Here's to you, Mom, for getting us waked up, washed off, well-fed, and on our way. Start your day with Florida orange juice.
How the hell did he get up there? Do we know? Keep back, keep back, keep back. Why this house? Why this morning?
Keep your head down and get out of the alley.
I never saw him. How could you not see him? He's hanging up there.
Da Vinci's Inquest, Sunday at 9 on CBC.
Well, am I too late to change my story?
Welcome back. Next week on the Fifth Estate, with Washington's war drums warming up again and Iraq back in the headlines, we'll tell the story of the Canadian genius who set out to build Saddam Hussein a weapon like no other in history, and why it could happen again. His name was Gerald Bull, and his career began with a dream.
The man behind the project is McGill's 34-year-old professor of engineering science, Dr. Jerry Bull. Dr. Bull says that it's not impossible with this technique to place a package in orbit or hit the moon.
In 1963, the U.S. Army and the Canadian government were funding a mysterious project, a 16-inch cannon with a barrel 60 feet long that could launch satellites. But everyone there that day could just imagine that this supergun could be turned to a military purpose as well. Years of calculation, trials, and errors would soon be put to the test. Dr. Bull himself was the last one into the bunker. For a time, he was the darling of the North American defense establishment. But then people became suspicious. There were rumors he was selling his secrets to South Africa.
According to what we've been told, they were re-exported out of Spain on a ship called the Breezan, and it gave its destination as Canada. Only guess what?
Where did it go?
South Africa.
South Africa. Well, I haven't got it. We'll certainly check it.
Gerald Bull chose exile in Brussels, where he began to dream up all kinds of killing machines. He'd share them with almost anyone: China, South Africa, Iraq.
If one's ideas and capabilities are not appreciated at one location, it is only natural to see if you can find another customer.
If he had new friends in Baghdad, he now had many enemies as well.
The execution of Jerry Bull was definitely not a lone assassination, but the state execution of an enemy of the state.
But what of the blueprints and the weapon he left behind? The genius and the gun, next week. And a voyage like any other, like thousands of trips big freighters make through the St. Lawrence Seaway every year.
Everything was normal, just a beautiful evening.
The Windhoek, full of prairie wheat, steamed along the Welland Canal, headed for a routine passage under Bridge 11, raised up and open to let the big ship pass.
I lined it up on the center of the bridge. It was no problem at all, everything normal.
Then suddenly the trip was anything but routine. With the Windhoek right underneath.
Jesus Christ, he said, the bridge is coming down. He said, run.
Seen on home video shot from the shore, the collision was spectacular. The crew's escape, miraculous.
And I just sort of looked around. I looked around and said, my God, I'm alive.
And then the Windhoek caught fire.
Holy shit. God, jump off the boat, guys.
Look at all the people waiting.
I knew this would happen.
Jim, where's the boys?
Oh,
The details of this incident, the how and the why, haven't been revealed. But now the Fifth Estate has pieced together the details of what happened that night when the Windock met bridge number 11. That's next week on the Fifth Estate. Remember, you can learn more about the Fifth Estate by logging onto the internet and clicking cbc.ca/fifth. Right now, for everyone here at the Fifth Estate, I'm Lyndon McIntyre. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.
Hi, I'm Mark Kelly. Tomorrow, CBC's opening night marks Halloween with an encore presentation of Guy Maddin's Dracula, Pages from a Virgin's Diary. This dark and daring film features the Royal Winnipeg Ballet in Maddin's unique vision of Bram Stoker's classic novel. It's been nominated for 4 Gemini Awards and an International Emmy. That's followed by The Nature of Things, with one man's personal story of dealing with chronic depression. I'm Mark Kelly. CBC Wednesday Night continues.
Ah, beautiful, isn't it, Mr. Bond?
But deadly. It's made of pure plutonium and corn syrup.
Come celebrate the best in Canadian television. Sean Cullen hosts the Gemini Awards, Monday night on CBC.
I'm Peter Mansbridge. A peek inside the country's books. All of the details are coming up next on The National.
Elantra sedan or the sporty GT. Either way, you'll be driving a new Hyundai.
Je t'accroche du regard, tu t'avances vers le bas. 3, mais il est déjà trop tard. Va pas croire au hasard. 4, tu m'allumes une clope. 5, je t'accroche du regard.
When you get heartburn caused by acid reflux, it's like hot splashes scorching up your chest and throat. Before you see a doctor, try non-prescription Gaviscon. Gaviscon tablets feel different. They become smooth and creamy on the way down. Then Gaviscon forms a soothing, protective barrier that helps keep acid down. Fast relief so you can get back to sleep. So write it down. Get Gaviscon, non-prescription relief from acid reflux.
Wow, that was some night.
Yeah, they sure do know how to throw a party. I'm beat.
Yeah, let's head off to bed.
Need some new furniture this Halloween? You're in luck. It's time for the Leon's Halloween Bonanza with special prices throughout the showroom. And best of all, you pay nothing, absolutely nothing, not even the taxes until 2004 with no interest. So, hurry into Leon's.
Where is it? Oh, darn it.
Please, tell me that wasn't my head.
New Trident White. Fresh taste, white smile.